Hi, on today's show, we're going to be speaking to someone that's going to help us understand unconscious bias and how unconscious bias can actually really impact the way that we interact at work, in our lives, in our relationships, and what we can do to change that. Hi. Hi, this is Joey Buzzertle, and welcome to the Secret Men's Business podcast. On today, we're going to be speaking to Chris Delaney from the UK, who's become a bit of an expert with unconscious bias and how he helps people to transfer that bias into a more healthy way of seeing things. Chris, how are you?
I'm very good, Joe. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Hello from the UK. I mean, you guys are so lucky. You're able to do what you want, can't you, over there? You're able to move around.
Well, it's really funny because we came out the lockdown and the government changed the policy. So everyone went from not meeting, not hugging, wearing masks. 24 hours later, people was hugging, seeing each other. Everyone took the mask off and away. It's black and white.
I mean, on Sunday here, we became the official longest city in the world to be in lockdown. It's not something to be proud of, but once we were the most livable city, now we're the longest in lockdown cities. So before we start, Chris, do you want to just maybe tell people a little bit about your background? Maybe, where you came from and how you've got to this point?
So when I was at school, I used to see myself as a dyslexic loser. That's how I believed who I was. Because I was dyslexic, I struggled reading and writing, I struggled spelling. I also had this terrible list, so I couldn't even talk. So like the essentials, reading, writing and talking, I was terrible at. So I left school with no qualifications and no dreams and no hope. I really thought my life was going to go nowhere. So I ended up working in low paid, low skilled positions. Joe, can you believe that my first job, I was paid £1 an hour?
Oh my God, £1?
£1 an hour. £1 an hour. That's
crazy. Is that legal? Is that legal? Was that legal?
We didn't even have minimum wage. So at the time, it was legal. People left school, you got put into warehouse, manufacturing jobs, and you just paid like a minimum wage. You just literally running around, moving the boxes and cleaning up after the more skilled workers. So I'm in these job roles, and don't really think my career is going to be anything. Just going to get this minimum wage and try and live hand to mouth. But inside me, I had this kind of passion where I always knew that I wanted to help people. I was always passionate about helping improve people's confidence and helping people, just talk out their worries and their anxieties. I was that kid that people always came to me and told me their problems. We'd sit on the curb as a couple of kids and they'd tell me everything about their life that was going on and all these hidden secrets. And I always thought, why are people telling me this? Then I realised because I had a list, I never talked. I was quiet. So I was the best listener in the world.
Wow. I mean, but did you feel like that's also a trust thing. People don't normally trust people. So that's a really good compliment for you that people would trust you, to listen. And they would tell you their secrets in a way. But, even though you may not talk, they still think you're going to keep those secrets.
I think that's really true, actually, because at that time I thought, I'm just this quiet kid, so that's why people are talking to me. But now, because I do lots of coaching and hypnotherapy, I realise that I got this great empathy skill, and I'm really good at helping people feel relaxed with my body language, with my voice, and I'm really good at asking the questions that gets people to open up. At the time, I just thought I was this quiet kid, and that's why people was telling me. And anyway, going back to the warehouse job, I ended up having a lucky break. At the same time as working in the warehouse, I was volunteering with scout groups and youth groups, used to take disabled adults rock climbing and hiking because I had this passion again for helping people. And the good thing about volunteering is you learn loads of skills, don't you? Have experiences, learn skills. It inspired me to read more books as well. I wanted to improve my own personal development. And in the warehouse, I got my lucky break. This is the biggest break in my life. I got a chance to learn how to drive a forklift truck. So I'm on this course, and I am the king of that truck. Being dyslexic, the plus side is that you're a kinesthetic learner. You learn by doing. So I get on the truck and I'm driving it through the chicane, lifting up the pallet, dropping it down, reversing it back out. I am the best person the instructor have ever seen on that forklift truck. But I got some colleagues who are terrible. They're nervous, the anxiety, they see this big beastie machine, and when they get on it, they crash into the pallets, they try and jump off when it's still moving, and then they drive over the instructor a couple of times. So the instructor turns around to me and says, Chris, you're going to pass your forklift truck test tomorrow. And he turns to my colleagues and says, "You're going to fail." This guy was not a motivational speaker. It made my colleagues even more anxious. So I went over to him and I whispered this technique to him. It's a technique that I used to teach the adults when they're scared of rock climbing, just like a visualization technique. And for some reason, it worked. It was like the magic click of the fingers. They got into the truck, dead confident, drove for the chicane, lifted up the pallet, dropped it back down, reversed back out, and passed their forklift truck tests. We've all passed. It's a great day for us.
Do you reckon that guy, right? Did that guy have like good outcomes by being that telling them those bad affirmations? Like he would have had bad fail results, wouldn't he? Because he would always just tell them the truth rather than trying to motivate them.
Yeah, I think it was like the contrast of someone being like confident and then the colleagues being so anxious. That contrast made him think, you're going to pass. It was like a flip away comment, like, you're going to pass, but you guys, you need a little bit more work. And we've only got like a set amount of time to do this. But it's funny though, because that guy came back to see me 12 months later and he told me that he wasn't the forklift truck instructor. He was the managing director of the organisation.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, wow. He said, the only reason I came down that day to do the forklift truck course is because the instructor was off ill, so I thought I'd step in and make sure you guys could do your course on time. I was like, this is great, but why have you come all this way to tell me this like thing 12 months later? He said, well, the thing is, we always remember the magic whisper. We call you the magic whisper. Your colleagues were nervous and anxious. You went over, whispered something to them, and then they became really confident people. We have a team meeting every month and we talk about you at every one of our team meetings.
Wow.
This is great praise. And then he tells me the big one. He says, Chris, we're looking at expanding our team. We need more forklift truck instructors. I'm like, yeah. He goes, we want to offer you a job. I was like, wow. And then he says to me, the course to be a forklift truck instructor costs £3,000. So this is like a dyslexic guy on minimum wage. I'm eating beans and toast with tea. That's how poor I am. I got like 30 quid in the bank, not £3,000. And I thought, this is a con. He wants my money. There's no job at the end of it. This is like the biggest con in the world. And he read all this on my face and said, no. We're going to pay for your course. We're going to mentor you. We're going to support you. We're going to develop you because we see something special in you. We can see you got a passion for helping people. So I jumped on that opportunity. And for me, Joe, success comes from having a passion and taking those opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, and these opportunities come from you may have not said something to him by whispering in his ear, but that whisper, that courage to actually say, hold on a second, I don't really agree with what you're doing, was actually the doorway to the success. So, it is in a way, you've got to just take those moments, don't you?
Definitely. If you read any autobiographies of people who are really successful, they take risks, they jump on opportunities, they take chances. Sometimes they fail, they get it wrong, but they always learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is great at this, and Elon Musk makes so many mistakes and gets things wrong.
Yeah. I think the key there is that, he never says it's a mistake.
Yes.
It's always an opportunity. And that's why, So today we're talking about unconscious bias. So I know that word is being used quite a lot lately, but a lot of people don't know what it means fully. So do you want to give us just a bit of an understanding of what the word represents?
So basically, unconscious bias is having an opinion about someone. We're not having enough data. So you might meet someone based on their age, their height, their ethnicity, their gender, if they're wearing glasses or have hair or not, or wearing a black t-shirt. You make instant opinions about people in that moment. People say it's like 10, 15, 20 seconds. It's not. It's instantaneously. Hundreds of pieces of data gets filtered through our minds, and we get a liability factor.
Yeah. Is it based around? Can it be based around information that they know, like rather than that's what they see?
Yeah, definitely. So it's all based on our values, our experiences, and our beliefs. But it can be based on written information. So they have a halo effect. And a horns effect. So I'll give you an example.
I'll give you an example, right? Today I got my car serviced. And my surname, the guy that runs the mechanic place, he looked at my surname and he asked me where I came from. And I said, I'm Maltese. And he's Maltese. And all of a sudden, it was like we were best friends. It was the bizarrest feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. That's affinity bias. So we always are connected to people who've got anything in common with. So it could be that you both came from the same country, similar sounding names, that you both went to the same university, or even that you support the same football or rugby team. If you got anything in common with someone, you like them more. And actually, if you show that you like someone, they like you more in return as well, just because they think you like them.
So I got a $200 discount on my service because of that. He gave me $200. I know he gave me $200 off because of the fact that we connected, which I found really bizarre, but it was lovely. I mean, so how does it work in the opposite way? Like, what are some of the unconscious biases that we have based on the things that we don't like? What are some of the things that are common that we do without even knowing we're doing it?
So there's an experiment in America where they sent off a load of resumes and CVs and application forms to hundreds of different employers, and it was the same copy on them, the same wording, but they sent 2 photographs. One was an obese person, and one was like a natural weight individual. No, I don't know what a natural weight individual is, but it was a natural weight individual. And the results was that the applications with the obese photo was declined for job interviews, where the one with the natural weight person got more job interview offers. But it's interesting as well, because that's an unconscious bias based on a overweight person, an obese person, photograph of this, I presume, very large individual. But as I say that, Joe, when you picture that obese person, do you picture a male or female?
I pictured a female.
A female. So even though I didn't talk about gender or didn't talk about sex, that you automatically came up with a female person. It's interesting.
I'm sorry.
90% of people come up with a male person, but this is what unconscious bias is.
I know. My mind went to for some reason. My mind went to that movie about who's what's eating up Gilbert Grape. And he had the obese mother. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny how information can just channel us into what we think, what we see, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. If I started off this interview as well talking about female people and talked about women a little bit more and kind of talked about large size this and large size that, I would have influenced that opinion anyway, because sometimes the surrounding words, even imagery, your journey from here to the podcast or to the job interview or to work influences you all the time and influences what your mind focuses on as well. So you might have this unconscious bias, but it don't mean you believe that an overweight person is always male or female or lazy or a good worker. It's just an instant thought.
Does it have does it also represent an insecurity in the people that are doing it? I'll give you an example, right? So I know someone who is a 55-year-old female who is decided to become a bodybuilder, right? Now, in the normal everyday, whatever that is, public, that doesn't seem like a normal thing. So because she eats really intensely and because she trains really intensely and because her body was changing, everyone at her work, right, decided to tell her that they started abusing her, saying that she's not really a good fit for the company, saying that she's changed. And it really just had I think it just really represented more about how they were feeling about themselves. So is that like an unconscious bias? Because they saw her and they only wanted her to be the way she was before. They didn't want the new her, which was more about health and improved, which I think would have been a good thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it depends on the situation. It could have been like a number of things, but what often happens is we don't like to look at ourselves in a negative viewpoint or a negative perspective. So we like to put our negative things onto other people.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking that you're not a good worker, you're not skilled, that you're not authority in your sector, this person is now becoming more confident to perform a little bit better. You think, I'm now rubbish. So instead of thinking that, you think, right, that person now is abusing themselves by doing all the weights and doing all the healthy stuff.
Yeah.
So put the negative thoughts onto them. So that could be one of the reasons, but there could be a number of reasons for that situation as well.
Well, she doesn't work there anymore because they managed her out. They made exactly what you said happen. Someone that was really good at their job, they automatically started saying that she was failing in her job. Right, but everything really links back to the body. So yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm sure it must happen quite a lot that we're not even aware of. It happens a lot? You think?
Definitely, because you can go to a job interview and say like a female is applying for a traditional masculine job role, and the interviewers are all male and they've worked in an all male environment. You might meet the female and just instantaneously be like, right, that person is not suitable for the job because this is a male environment. Even if the female is the most skilled, high work ethic, motivated person who can do that job without, in a blink of an eye, their opinion will then affect the interview process. And that's what unconscious bias is. It's a stereotype of prejudice and opinion that affects the whole interview process.
Yeah. So what is that? Yeah. What do you think are some of the important things that people need to know about not, I guess, how do they not present a space for there to be unconscious bias? And if you are employing people, what are some of the things to try and avoid so you don't present with unconscious bias? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's really tricky because we're all learning about it. But nowadays, you don't even, it's just things that we used to do in the past just don't cut it anymore. So are there any tricks that you can suggest?
Yeah, definitely. When you have the unconscious bias, so you believe the person who's now being healthy and doing the weights is a bad worker because they've got this new positive, confident thing about them, you'll search for evidence to prove that your opinion's right. So you'll look for every time that person makes a mistake or every time that person says something in a confident way. And even though 90% of the time they're confident, they're a great worker, and they're doing things the right way, you ignore that and focus on the negativity because that's your beliefs. You're always searching for evidence to back up your own beliefs to make them real in your own world. So this happens in job interviews, and if an employer wants to help overcome that, the research says, one, you should allow staff, especially HR teams who are doing the recruitment process, to volunteer to go into unconscious bias training, because the stats say that if you force people onto it, they don't take on the unconscious bias training into everyday processes, whereas to volunteer, they put it into practice. The second one is to have blind applications. So a bit like you said, Joe, about your name, taking off names, taking off universities. There's so much unconscious bias with the university. Like Oxford and Cambridge in Britain is like, the prestige one. If that's in your resume, just people think you're very intelligent because you put down Oxford or Cambridge. And if the interview's gone to the same university you went to, then you get that affinity bias as well. So you get like a double whammy. That top university, I also went there. You're definitely working for my organisation. Yeah. So we can take off names, age, gender, a number of different.
Who does that? They do that. They receive a resume. Someone processes all that, and then they remove it, and then they get. But what if it's a smaller place and they don't have? How do they do that if it's a smaller place? I mean, I think what you're saying is great, but sometimes that's not sometimes realistic. So how do they have to? Is it best for them to employ that method, you think?
So it's definitely best to have someone split the criteria, and then the interview just reads the job experiences and that sort of stuff. That's like definitely. The second thing is to use a structured job interview. So every applicant is asked the same 8 questions in the same order by the same interviewers, and there is example answers that the employers can then compare the interviewees' answers again, and they normally score at 1, 2, 3, or 4, with 1 being rubbish and 4 being amazing. And also have an interview panel. So each person writes down their opinion of the person, writes down their scoring, and at the end you all compare your scores to see and kind of like normalize that scoring criteria. So the research shows that's the best way to make it a more fair process. Take out anything that's unnecessary that can create an unconscious bias. Have a scoring process that you compare the answers to, and have a panel interview so individual people can give a fair scoring that you then discuss and normalise afterwards.
Yeah. So say, let's talk about that overweight person again, right? So if that overweight person is getting rejection after rejection, right, and there could be an element of unconscious bias being played out, what would you say to that person? How, for example, do you think they need to go to confidence training or something? Like, what do they need to do so they can deal with what's going on in the world and what's going on with the job force?
So as an individual, it might not be anything to do with their skill set, their experience, or their confidence, because the unconscious bias is just an opinion from someone else. So they might be dead confident and skilled in their job role, but some goals, I think because you're overweight, you're going to be lazy. I am now going to search for evidence to prove that my opinion is right during that job interview process. So a couple of things they can do in the application, don't have a photo on there because that is the barrier that's stopping you getting a job interview. But when you get to the interview process, the interview will come downstairs, see you for the first time. In the first seconds, make an opinion about you. You're overweight, so I now believe you're going to be lazy. There's 3 responses, by the way, to like unconscious bias. One is you get your ages, your sexes, your races, your weighties, people who it's very hard to change their opinion. If I'm racist and someone's coming in from who's not white, it'd be very hard to change that opinion. But most people have an unconscious bias. It's just an instant opinion. I like you or I dislike you. And they go, oh, I don't know why I'm thinking that, but it's just a gut reaction.
Yeah.
They will then challenge themselves. They'll often challenge themselves and think, I know this is wrong because I've been unconscious bias training. I need to make the interview a little bit more fairer. And then you get the third lot who aren't ages, races or sexes, but they've probably got an unconscious bias against something else. So the unconscious bias is a likability factor in a job interview. I like you or I don't like you at the beginning. When you go and go into the interview process and get asked your first question, you can create an interview identity. So this is based on your level of confidence and your level of knowledge and experience. This is kind of what my books talks about, really. So when you get asked your first question, if you can highlight like your competencies confidently during that first interview question, the interviewer, because they're not racist, sexist or ages or fattest in this example, will be like, oh, I thought you was going to be rubbish, but actually God, I can tell now that you've got a high level of experience, you're communicating competently, I can see that you've got these skills that are dead relevant for the role, you know about the industry jargon, you're using that during the interview process. So I actually think that you're going to be, a charismatic, person in the workplace, so you're going to be a highly skilled individual. So that first interview question is highly important in recruitment processes because that becomes the main filter. So I like you or I dislike you, but for most people, that's just a gut reaction and they kind of know that's, it's not a really fair thing. When they ask you your first question, you need to be like, wow, I am amazing. I am fantastic. I am skilled. I am the person you need. And then they're going to be like, right, this person is ideal. I will now search for positive evidence that they are suitable for this role.
Yeah. And in a way, like, an interview really is like, you're selling yourself. I mean, if you go in there and you're a little bit flat, I mean, you can't, I'm not saying this to be rude or anything, or even to have an unconscious bias, but if you're going in there and you're just flat, I think that you must realize that you're competing with other people. And so even though you might have a good resume, and the other thing I was going to say to you actually when I was listening is, I think that there's a lot of evidence that we want to remove what we see. Like if you think about The Voice and we think about these love shows, they've all got these things where there's no visibility. Like, let's talk to someone through a screen and let's see if we have a relationship. Let's listen to a voice. So I think that the community is realizing that we can't judge people by the way they look. We've got to be more open to what, especially with women's body sizes. Like, I've noticed lately that there's been a change in what we're seeing on magazine covers. They're now different shapes. So it's changing in the community, don't you think?
Definitely, the media, especially for female models, is massively changed in the last 20 years, which definitely influences people's opinions about people. So there's an unconscious bias called what is beautiful is good. So we see attractive people and we presume they're going to be more intelligent, more of a team player, have more social and communication skills just because we find that person attractive. But our attractiveness is also influenced by the media that we grow up in. So if we see very thin, tall models, we believe that's attractive. But now there's a mixture of models out there where we can have our own opinion.
There's a mixture. There's a mixture everywhere, isn't there? There's a mixture on TV and everything now. Like, it's our generation. Brilliant. I mean, when I was growing up, everything was white and everything was perfect. Yeah. Now you're getting all these different people, which it's good. It is good. So but then sometimes I think, again, please don't judge me for this, but I do think that we've gone to the far opposite end because we feel like we have to. Right, but it's still positive, and I think eventually there'll be a middle place where people just accept people for who they are. You know what I'm talking about when you watch a show and there's a token of something. Oh, look, there's the token Asian, or there's the token. When that stops, I think that's when it'll be better. Rather than having tokens, it's just normal people just doing normal things.
Yeah, definitely, and that's because if there was no unconscious bias, we'd do that, wouldn't we? We'd just recruit people and hire people in actors and stuff like that, and singers just based on their skills. But it's really interesting that you mentioned The Voice before, where it's a blind audition, so the singers are singing and the judges are looking at the audience, and they only turn around if they like the voice. But unconscious bias is created through someone's voice, people's accents.
Yeah. Oh my God. See, it's still
Well.
so we're still doing it.
Everything creates unconscious bias.
So
You
how?
can't get away from it, but you got to learn.
Yeah. So I was going to say, how do we work on that? What do we do to start? You know, I didn't even notice that. See, I thought I was being good by saying, "Oh, look, I'm watching The Voice. We're not looking at them," but it's true. It actually made me realize. So, how do we let go of all of that? What's your thoughts of how we can just? What does the world need to do, or what do we need to do individually to start to just accept what we hear, what we see, rather than putting a label or stereotype to what we experience?
It's all about awareness, because we'll always have unconscious bias, because our mind just works where we group things into, we put things into groups and stuff like that because it's easy for us to process it. So, young people are energetic, old people are knowledgeable, or young people will stay out dead late and, be late for work, and old people are going to be tired a little bit easy. So we always group all the time. But if you become aware of unconscious bias and you know it's happening, you can then challenge yourself to help make fair decisions.
Yeah.
So if you get that gut reaction feeling that we always get, or you make a generalization or a prejudice, you can then challenge yourself on that. So going back to that, the female applying for the masculine job role, you might kind of go, oh, why is this woman applying for the masculine job? That's an unconscious bias. I shouldn't be thinking that. What's the evidence to prove that females would work in here? Well, actually, Jo, who's a female, has been working here for 20 years, and she's one of our best workers. So you've got to constantly be challenging yourself all the time, and then that becomes a bit like your natural standpoint.
Yeah, but you did say something earlier, and I think that's really true, and that is that we need to understand that not everyone's going to be some people will not want to. Some people will be stuck. You know what I mean? And so we may be pushing the people to be aware of what to see and not see, but I know that we can't force people to change, can we? In regards to your book, so do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is about and the title, and I'll make sure that people can see it in the link. So what made you write the book, and what does the book talk about?
So COVID came, lockdown came, and I thought, what am I going to do during this time? It's before everyone jumped onto Zoom as well. So because I'm interested in my background's careers, and I do like phobias and fear moves with hypnotherapy, I thought, what can I do? So I read 100 research papers on job interviews, because I'm really passionate about helping people. And all the papers, Jo, were to help the employer, the job performance of each applicant. So it was always designed to help companies recruit better staff.
Yeah.
So I thought, how can I flip all this research from across the globe and make it relevant to the job applicant? And then, so after reading that, I created the book. So the book kind of covers unconscious bias, how the interview's behaviour, what they do in the interview affects the applicant's behaviour as well, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. It talks about the interview identity, which is your identity based on your level of confidence and knowledge perceived by the employer during the job interview. But really, the main part of the book is using the research to tell you what creates high-scoring interview answers. So, as an example, the higher number of words per interview answer often equates to the higher number of job offers for those individuals. People with low self-esteem will often use short, snappy interview answers filled with ums and ahs, and will often, and this is terrible, they often self-disclose weaknesses. Where in a job interview, you should be a self-promoter. In fact, 3 rules for a successful job interview are: identify the job criteria, be a self-promoter, and communicate with confidence.
Yes, I know, and that's the thing. It's like, but again, do you think that that's something that everyone can learn, or are there people that you think are, may struggle with that? Do you think everyone can learn this process? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Like the confident thing, like I'm a hypnotherapist as well, so I get people with lifelong spider phobias. They literally can't go into a room if they think there's a spider in that other room. And within, half an hour, they cure, they can hold a spider in the hand. So if I can do that with a spider phobia, anyone can become more confident talking about themselves. That's what a job interview is, talking about themselves for 45 minutes. The problem is people see it as a life and death situation. if I don't pass this job interview, I'll have no money, I'll have to sell my house, you know, but I'll be living on the streets. It's not that. There's thousands of jobs out there. It's about you finding the right employer for you. So just talk
Yeah.
about yourself.
You know how I do it? You know, I haven't been in for I work for myself and do hypnotherapy too, but when I used to go for jobs, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I used to pretend that I was just an actor. I would act. So I would go in there and just always just perform, right? And I always got the jobs I applied for.
Yeah.
Because I actually got a job at one point that I really shouldn't have got. Like I wasn't qualified in that job, but because I acted so well, they gave it to me. And then 2 weeks after, I had to leave because I couldn't do the job. So it's funny how when you've got confidence, all you have to do is try and sell these people. So that's why it's important.
Yeah.
Do you have hope that the world is changing?
Oh yeah, definitely. You kind of proved it before when you talked about, 20 years ago we had these tall, skinny white models, and that was it. Where now there's like a massive representation across the spectrum, isn't there? You're getting, people with different disabilities presenting TV shows. You wouldn't have got that 20, 30 years ago, would you? Especially in England, I love England because we're so multicultural. Like every organisation you work in now, it's very multicultural. And in the future, it's gonna be global companies, isn't it? Like you got companies like Google, Microsoft. Your team members will be sat in their working offices, bedroom offices, different offices across the globe, all working together because of technology. So the way the world and technology is exploding is creating, a place where we interact with a variety of people all the time. So that takes away our prejudices. You always find a lot of prejudice that are happening now are in areas where they don't mix with other people. So if you're sexist, you probably grew up in a male family, just to generalize, or if you're racist, you might grow up where you're only surrounded by a certain ethnicity. But when you kind of mix, interact, communicate, and learn to understand other people and their beliefs and their values, we find that dead interesting. I know people are very sociable, but it breaks down our prejudice because we think, I thought that group was A, B, and C, but now actually I realise they're not like that.
Yeah. I mean, I totally 100% agree. And I find myself very open to everyone, except for, which I don't know if this is unconscious bias or not, but I am open to everyone, right? Even people that look dangerous. I give everyone a fair go. But once I feel the danger, once they start acting dangerous, that's when I then become... So is that unconscious bias still, or is that just protection?
So unconscious bias is part of protection, isn't it? So our ancestors who, their minds created unconscious bias. They'd walk through the forest, see another tribe, and in that moment, you got to instantly go, right, they're a threat and I won't be able to defeat them, so I'm going to run away. Oh, they're a threat and I can defeat them, so I will attack them. Or actually, they're friendly, so I can trade my fish for their
but I don't feel that at the beginning. I feel open, but when they start to show me the threat, you know what I mean? Like I could be, because that was one of the things that I really worked on in regards to being a therapist was, seeing people that were, say, really masculine or people with tattoos or whatever. I used to assume and do unconscious bias. So I really worked on just accepting them. But if someone starts abusing me and yelling at me, I then become uncomfortable. So I think, is that still unconscious bias, me being uncomfortable? Or is that more me being protective of myself and having boundaries?
Yeah, definitely. So it's great that you overcome the unconscious bias to treat everyone equally. But we're still reading people all the time. So we're reading their tonality, their micro-facial expressions, their posture, body language. So when we detect the threat, our mind's going like alert, alert, alert.
Yeah.
We don't even know sometimes that it's threatening, but we know at a subliminal level. And that's when you need to decide what to do in that situation.
Yeah.
That's when your fight and flight kicks in. So it's great that you've overcome your unconscious bias, but you still got your threat alert ready, and we need that. You should never get rid of that.
Yeah. So can I ask you, for the last question is, what do you think is the world's most common unconscious bias at the moment? Like, what is it that everyone sort of seems to be unconsciously biased about right now? I know that like last year it was like Donald Trump, right? But like, like in 2021, like what is it that you feel people are, they're doing a lot of unconscious bias on and creating an unfortunate belief about a certain person or group of people?
So it's always dependent on the country you're in, because you're in a country where, there's an economic disaster and there's no jobs and stuff like that, you'll then blame the migrants. So this happens like time and time again throughout history.
Yeah.
If it's a country where females have just been allowed to work a little bit more, because not all countries had the same policies, do they? So more females are going into work, but you're, you know, a group of males, and you're finding it really hard now to get a job. You'll blame the females. So sometimes, like, it's the environment, often the culture of the country, or sometimes the company, that create some of these biases to become more, this is an opinion. So I am now going to be sexist, or I am now going to be racist.
Yeah.
We don't say that, but we start acting this way. Governments as well. Governments put a lot of stuff onto us all the time, because if you're in a top-down country where the government, you know, you do it this way and that's it, you're very influenced by their opinion. And governments as well, or politicians, will use a certain style of speech to try and get you to feel frightened sometimes, or to get you to feel excited and happy. And their language, which is all subconscious often, affects how we feel. And if you're targeting that language against a group, as an example, then you're likely, especially if you're a follower rather than a leader, and most of us are, you're likely to follow that language.
Yeah, the one I feel at the moment, the biggest unconscious bias that's going on is people that want to get vaccinated and the people that don't want to vaccinate.
Oh,
and so in Australia, anyway, like I really noticed this, like people are really getting really angry with other people's choices, and it's like they want to just convince that other person that they're wrong. And so, yeah, I still feel like in Australia anyway, we've got a long way to go with that. We need to just back off a bit and let people decide what they want to do, rather than blaming or persecuting them. Or it is the blame thing. You're going to make us stay in lockdown. You're going to make us get sick, versus we're going to get poisoned. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's like a very powerful one as well, because it's all related to death, isn't it? So if you had a family member who's died because they got the vaccine, and even though the stats would say that most people get cured and are okay, your viewpoint, which will be very emotional, is from that, in it, that, you know, so we got told to have a vaccine, we were forced to have a vaccine, and then, you know, my family or my loved ones die. So it's a very strong viewpoint. And then the opposite is, you know, if you don't get the vaccine, you're going to continue to spread, because we know through research that it just spreads and spreads and spreads, because we're all living in these crowded cities. So if it spreads, you're going to potentially harm my loved ones and my family and even myself. So it's very emotional, this, because it's linked to life and death of the people that we love. And like I said before, once you believe something, you'll constantly search for evidence to back your belief. And if someone criticizes your evidence, you either go into yourself and don't argue, or you fight back verbally.
Yeah,
sometimes
it's true.
well.
Yeah. Oh God, I hope that we get through this. Chris, thank you so much for explaining that and sharing. I think this is a really important topic right now. So thank you for letting us sort of understand it, and hopefully it will help us through the next year or so, because I think that we need to let go of some of that and accept people, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, like, while we're in this lockdown, you know, I wrote the book. I've known people who've changed jobs, have been in a job and have never wanted to change, and then they go, actually, let me reflect. Am I happy? Am I sad? Where's my life up to? So even though there's some terrible things happening, I think we also have to try and use it as an opportunity to do something positive in our lives as well.
Thank you. Like, you're an inspiration. So thanks for being on the show, and let's keep in touch, and hopefully we can learn more from you down the track. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Joe.
You've been listening to the Secret Means Business podcast. Now, don't forget, new podcasts like the one with Chris will be out on a Monday. And if you want to listen to a retro podcast and listen to one of our episodes from my library, listen on Thursday mornings, because they'll be released then. Don't forget to hit subscribe and to become a member, so we can actually send you notifications of when new podcasts get released. Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye.